Storefront activation program. We will be recording this, so you will receive a copy of the presentation after it's done. I'm going to move to the agenda. So this will be welcome. So welcome everybody. As I said, this is being recorded. You will receive it. The agenda will be, we'll quickly do a Bacb department overview, and then small business storefront activation program overview itself, a short overview and guidance on how to apply. And then we'll save the end of the meeting for questions and answers. If throughout you want to submit any questions, please use the Q&A Zoom function, so you can submit it over there. I will answer some of the questions live, but some will be answered just via the chat. So please use that to answer, ask all of your questions. And with that, I will jump to the presentation. This is from the Bacb Economic Recovery team. The team right now is made up by Kenia Merritt, our first Deputy Commissioner and Small Business Officer. Myself, Isabel Velez-Diaz. I'm the Director of Economic Recovery for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, and Maurice Phillips is the Recovery Team Manager. So you can reach out to us if you have any specific questions, and also you might see emails coming from us. So we just want to make sure you know who you will be working with for this RFP. The Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Department is made up a lot of different parts. So we have from the business affairs part to the consumer protection and regulation part. So it includes from business compliance and enforcement, as you can see here, to our new Department of Office of Labor Standards, to the team you will be working on, which is under the Small Business Advocacy, Recovery and Business Development Programs. So this program and all the programs the recovery team is working on are part of the Chicago Recovery Plan, which is a $1.2 billion investment in our residents and their future. It includes equitable economic recovery and thriving safe communities by doing community development, small business and workforce support, community climate investments, arts and culture, tourism, parks and infrastructure, and then on the thriving and safe communities, affordable housing, assistance to families, violence prevention and reduction, health and wellness, youth opportunities, homelessness support service, and environmental justice. This specific program is a response to COVID-19 impacts. The COVID-19 pandemic left many small businesses experiencing financial hardship, even now when everything is sort of back open. Brick and mortar businesses that rely on foot traffic to drive sales were particularly hit, and cost increases driven by the pandemic have further challenged those the finances of those businesses. This financial hardship has prevented businesses from opening or expanding their stores, leading to a significant increase in vacant storefronts all across the city. To ensure strong recovery for Chicago small business and artists, and increase safety and foot traffic in commercial corridors, this program will provide funding to nonprofit organizations to do two things: provide small businesses with pop-up opportunities in vacant storefronts, and also provide grants to local artists to create art displays in vacant storefront windows on those that are not move-in ready for businesses. So for the program overview, the awardees will activate vacant storefronts in a retail corridor in two ways. The first one is move-in ready vacant storefronts. The awardee will identify vacant properties and lease storefronts directly from the landlord and support temporary cosmetic improvements to ready the space. I will highlight that it's temporary. There cannot be any permanent improvements done. This is only temporary. And then they will identify and match entrepreneurs as tenants for subsidized rents. And then they will do short-term pop-ups and provide small business advising and support for those that have never had a storefront before, just how to make that work. And then for those that are not moving ready, that need a little more permanent upgrades, the awardee will identify vacant property owners interested in art activation and work with local artists and vendors to create art or artistic signage in storefront windows that promote local businesses and just makes the whole corridor nicer, even if there isn't enough business in the storefronts. So applicant eligibility, this is obviously important. Local community and economic development organizations, such as chambers of commerce, community development corporations, and other not-for-profit. So 501c3s and what 501c6s are the applicants that can be program administrators for this specific program. Applicants are encouraged to work together and submit bids if this would improve their overall quality of their proposal. So because this is based, the applications will be for specific retail corridors. So if there's a few organizations that want to apply together, we definitely encourage that because that will probably increase their chances of being selected. And the core audience of the program, the small business and artists that have fewer than 500 employees and are based in Chicago. And they are also will need to be able to attest that their business was harmed by the pandemic. So the program budget, the ACP has reserved up to $2 million to fund activations over a 6-month period. The average awards are expected to range from $25,000 to $100,000 per commercial corridor. And BACP expect to make awards in approximately 20 to 25 commercial corridors at a range of different sizes and costs. One thing to note is that as a single applicant, you can apply for more than one corridor if your organization works in different areas of the city. Upon program award, BACP expects to work with programs to adjust the program design scope, and which may have impact on the total program costs after the submissions and selection. As I mentioned, there are different activation types. Applicants should propose specific commercial corridors that they will activate through this program, and the applicants can apply, as I mentioned, for one or multiple corridors. We recommend having an activation mix, so applicants should propose a mix of activation types in each corridor that best meets that corridor's needs. For example, a proposal could include one large interior activation to create a community market that has multiple pop-ups inside of it, if a corridor has a large vacant space, or 2 to 3 smaller interior activations to support small businesses offering needed products or service to the area. If a corridor has more independent, smaller available vacant storefronts. One interior activation can be accompanied by item 2 or 3 nearby storefronts if a corridor has some moving ready and some not. And a clusters of art displays is also fine if there are a lot of non-moving ready storefronts. So any combination that best meets the needs, and that's important for, in the application, you'll have a question of what are the needs of your retail corridor and what are you submitting as a response. And it's very important that it is very detailed and targeted to that specific corridor. And then the activations will be funded for a minimum of 2 months and a maximum of 6 months. So the details on the 2 specific activation types. Interior activations are the small business pop-ups. Grantees will be expected to negotiate short-term leases for moving ready vacant storefronts and partner with local small businesses to launch pop-up stores, community markets, and other commercial activations that support local businesses. The eligible expenses for this one, and to reiterate, these are the ones that are moving ready, are rent and utility expenses, insurance and policy fees, and temporary cosmetic improvements to moving ready properties for pop-up use. For example, cleaning, wall partitions or hangings, changing light bulbs, temporary signage, rented furniture. Because of regulations for this, these are all federal funds, and because of that, there cannot be any permanent improvements, so not even things like painting. So one workaround we recommend is renting things and staging instead of just upgrading permanently. And the second one for window activations are those that are not moving ready. The grantee will be expected to work with local artists to create display storefront windows that are viewable from the street. Examples can include holiday displays based on when this will launch that highlight merchandise from local business spotlights that use artistic posters or vinyl wraps to promote small businesses or events. or interactive art displays designed to engage pedestrians. Like we hope that you are creative in what you create for the spaces. It can be a lot of different things. And the eligible expenses is only payment to local artists. And one notice that the artist needs to own whatever they create at the end of the activation. For the small business eligibility, as we mentioned before, all small business and artists participating in this program must have fewer than 500 employees, be based in Chicago, and be able to attest that their business was harmed by the pandemic. The types of small businesses, this is our regular list of applicants that do not meet or are not eligible for grant funding for this program is listed here. So liquor store, adult bookstores, those type of businesses are regularly not eligible or not. So for landlords and properties, the grantees are expected to partner with landlords that have been actively engaged in good faith efforts to lease their properties for short or long-term uses. So landlords that have been on purpose keeping their properties vacant will likely not qualify. Landlords and own buildings with serious and chronic code violations or have outstanding fines onto the city are not eligible to participate in this program. One thing to on this point is that we listed a public available website where you can check if your landlord, the landlord you are working with, is up to date on and has paid all of their fees. So if in case they have not but want to before we review, because we will also check this, you can talk to them, but feel free to check that so you can get on top of making sure that whatever landlord that you're working with is up to date on all their codes and any fees they owe to the city. And then for small business pop-ups, the awardees will directly enter into leases with the landlord, so the small business does not have to. So for properties and rents, for small business pop-ups, applicants should focus on moving ready properties that require minimal temporary cosmetic updates for pop-up use. Construction or build-out expenses, as I mentioned, are not eligible under this program. There will be a phase 2 of this program from DPD that will include that, but this one does not. For artistic windows display, all vacant storefronts are eligible, and artists will own the art created once the program is closed. And applicants are expected to negotiate reasonable rental rates, and negotiating the rents is highly encouraged, with below market rates preferred, reflecting the benefits the storefront activation create for both the businesses and the landlords. And one thing to note is to support this work, marketing costs to promote activations and program staffing, up to 30% of the total award will also be eligible. So we understand that this is very labor intensive for your organization. So we will support a lot of staffing and also marketing to make sure that people actually come out to the retail corridors. Location. So applicants should propose specific commercial corridors that will activate through this program. Applicants can apply for one or multiple corridors. Applicants applying for multiple corridors should only submit one application and should include separate program summaries and budget line items for each corridor in their application. So when you fill out the budget template, make sure to have a budget per activation, but submit just if you're selecting 3 corridors, submit 3 budgets per corridor, but only one application. Then priority will be given to proposals that are aligned with other city initiatives, including the Chicago Recovery Plan, which you can find online, by the way, and Invest Southwest and community safety priorities. Proposals that cluster multiple activations together or build upon other initiatives to generate overlapping benefits to the community, and high traffic commercial corridors located on or near main intersections. This is a map for Invest Southwest. Proposals are not limited to Invest Southwest communities shown on the map, but preference will be given to those locations that build on existing efforts. This is a budget template. So the program budget is up to $100,000 per commercial corridor for a term of 2 to 6 months. This is a sample budget of $80,000 for 3 small business pop-ups and 3 artistic windows displays over 6 months. As I mentioned, this presentation will be sent to you so you can look at this in more detail and use it. But basically, we'll be funding the actual interior activation exterior activations that are the artist displays, marketing and outreach, and staffing allocation. So you can see those percentages here and as a sample budget. The scoring criteria. So this is important, obviously, because it's how your submission will be rated. The main points are on the program summary and implementation plan. So 45 points will be, it's a 100-point system, 45 of those will be here. So as I mentioned, describing your corridor and what its needs are, it's very important. So demonstrated small business and corridor need, including the impact of COVID-19 on small businesses and commercial vacancies, identification of potential vacant properties owned by landlords actively looking for to rent out the space and available for a reasonable rental rate, identification of the potential small businesses and artists to participate in the activation. You don't have to have all the businesses selected, but having potential small businesses in your application will be helpful for us to determine what kind of business and what you're thinking of doing in the retail corridor. And then just overall strength of the plan, the number and type of activations, location of activations, hours, marketing plan, and the plan to help the businesses secure long-term leases afterwards is also very helpful. And one that addresses small business and community needs. Detailed timeline and ability to launch activations by November 15th. We are targeting this to be able to launch the activations before Small Business Saturday. So it's important to have a timeline that will allow that to happen. And then alignment, as we mentioned, with other city initiatives, including Chicago Recovery Plan, Invest Southwest, and community safety priorities. Then the second one is organizational capacity and experience, 35 points. And here is where maybe joining forces with other organizations will be helpful, particularly for smaller organizations. So prior experience and past performance is important, so is staff capacity, and so is financial capacity. One thing to note, and you'll see this in this RFP, is that some of this costs, like the rental expenses, will be there will be allowed to be, so how we usually pay out is a little different, so they'll be eligible for expedited payments by the city to the organization. And then the program budget, so completeness of the budget, please use the budget template and please be very descriptive in where the column where you're supposed to describe what the budget will be, because that part is very important. And then the efficiency of the program, just what the cost per activation and per businesses and storefronts that will be activated. And the last one is overall responsiveness. So there is a list of documents on the RFP that need to be submitted along with the application. Make sure you submit all of those, because that is extra points, basically, because providing a complete application shows that you are paying attention to detail and submitting all that you need to submit. And make sure to also read the questions thoroughly and answer exactly what the question is asking. So a summary of the RFP and the process: the anticipated start date of the contract is October 1st, and the end date is September 30, 2023. There will be an option for 2 extensions, each not to exceed 1 year, at the discretion of the city, based on the availability of funds, need to extend the services, and the grantee's program performance. This initiative is funded by Chicago Recovery Plan using funding from the American Rescue Plan, so federal funds, and the local fiscal recovery fund, which is part of the American Rescue Plan. The RFP is due Friday, September 9th at 11:59 a.m. So that means before noon. That is very important. But one thing to note is we cannot legally accept any applications that are submitted after the due date. So please make sure to submit on Thursday, not on Friday, because there can be technical issues. We know the system is not the most user-friendly, so sometimes there is user error. And if there is no system-wide issue, we are not able to accept any submission that is past the due date. So we highly recommend submitting them on Thursday, not Friday, so to make sure that it's submitted on time. If you have any problem, there is a link, email on the RFP. If you are having technical issues, to email directly with iSupplier. And if you have any other question, here's the email that will go to our recovery team. It's BACP Economic Recovery at cityofchicago.org. And as you know, the proposals must be submitted via the online application on e-procurement. We cannot accept emailed or fax proposals, only ones submitted via the portal. So we touched a bit about this, but the timeline is September 9th, 2022 by 11:59 a.m. So noon, applications are due. By end of September of 2022, the awardees will be selected and announced. During October, the awardees will contract with landlords, small business, and artists. And by November 15th, the pop-ups will start and the art displays will launch. As we mentioned, we are targeting to have these up and ready by Small Business Saturday. And that is it for the presentation part. And now we'll open it up to questions. Please ask them via the chat and I will respond to them. So the first one I see here is, why doesn't the window activation grant allow for small stipend to property owners for use of their space and for insurance of their space? Yes, so it does. You can, I believe you can pay. We will submit this, all the questions. We will send them via email to you afterwards. But I believe we can also pay rent for spaces where there will be an art activation. The second question is, we have done this work over the last 2 years and we launched on the day of Small Business Saturday. You mentioned we should launch before this day. Would it be okay if we launched the activation on the day of Small Business Saturday? So the activations need to be ready by the 15th because we expect not everything will be like completely the first day. It's not like perfect. So we would like it to launch a little bit earlier so it is up and running and not launching on Small Business Saturday. Do the nonprofits also have to be located in Chicago? That is a great question that I am not. I believe probably, but we will follow up via email because I am not sure of that one. Do the artists get paid for their work? Yes, the artists are paid for their work. That is part of the allowable costs. So part of this program is to support artists. So artists can get paid for their work and they also own their work afterwards. So we're not keeping it, it's theirs. Would this grant allow for non-retail service-oriented businesses, something like art classes and entertainment? Yeah, any small business that it is not only retail. Anything that is activated, but it needs to have allow for people to walk in because we are trying to improve foot traffic. So even if it's like an art class or entertainment, if it has people coming in and out, I think that would be helpful. One thing to note is that it is unlikely it would allow for restaurants or any food businesses unless they are selling pre-made items, just because there wouldn't be enough time to get all the food and health department licenses. Would you please define art? What does it include and what does it exclude? So we listed on one of the slides just some of our ideas on what it could be. It could be interactive art, window display. It's probably more likely than not graphic art, like not music or anything like that, but graphic art, even if it's an interactive display, that is also fine. And also would be really great. Would expenses for a food theme pop-up be eligible? We have an empty restaurant space and several emerging food businesses that could rotate use of it. So for that one, as I mentioned, it is maybe not as easy to get the permits on time because we do have a pretty tight timeline on this program. If the kitchen is already licensed and people could use it, that would be an option, but it will probably be harder on the other types of businesses to be able to launch by the timeline. What about the small businesses payments to them? So small businesses will be selling, they won't be paid directly, they will just be allowed to use this space. And anything that needs to be furniture, anything they need would be bought for them by the, or rented for them by the program administrator. Can a nonprofit college propose a project? Yes, as long as you are not for profit, you are 501c3 or 501c6 are allowed to apply. So the only eligible properties must be moving ready. We wouldn't be able to use these funds to temporarily beautify vacant properties along with commercial corridors. Is that correct? So no, moving ready are only eligible for the pop-ups, but non-moving ready are eligible for the arts part activation of it. So depending on your commercial corridor, if it has a lot of empty non-moving ready, you can activate them with art instead of pop-up businesses. And for if they're sort of moving ready but need a little bit of help, we recommend staging and rental. I've seen some that when they're not ready, they just like rent out curtains and make it look like a different store. That is encouraged. So there can be some creativity around what is moving ready and what isn't. There just can't be, because of federal funding regulations, any permanent improvement done to the space. Do you have example of pre-made food items that could be for sale? Sure. So anything that's packaged somewhere else. So sometimes cafes have cookies and things they sell that are packaged somewhere else that are not made in that space, that would be fine. So anything that's made in a commercial kitchen and then moved to be sold, it's easier to permit than if the preparation of the food is happening on site. Would temporary artist studios workspaces qualify if they're open to the public? If whoever wrote that question can specify what would they be qualified for? How about educational programs for a 3-week cohort? Can we use space to teach? So no, this is to activate for businesses. It's not really designed for that. Can a small business proposal this project? No, this is the project administrator for this program will have to be a not-for-profit, so 501c3 or C6s. But small businesses can reach out to your local chamber if you think they could apply and you think you can qualify to be part of the pop-up, but they would not be project administrators. So if we create an event to draw in potential shoppers to support our corridor to view the activated storefront windows, can we not hire musicians for the events? For the event, you could. It would not be an eligible cost under this. You could do marketing and your own staff, or some there's always a 10% for overhead, so if you need a contractor to do some other things, but not specifically for musicians for the event. Can funds be used to cover costs related to a pop-up retail license? Yes, you can cover any cost that the business would have to have a pop-up at your space that you're renting out. Will the PowerPoint and Q&A be available for download? Yes. So we will send after this meeting, probably later today or tomorrow morning, an email with a copy of the presentation, a list of all the questions and all the answers, and specifically the ones that I haven't been able to answer will be answered by the on that document, and also a link to the video for this. What if the food is made but warmed on site? That is as I mentioned, this is just related to licensing. I think that is it depends on what health department category that falls under. So it could be if you have a space that is up to code and you can get that license quickly. So a lot of this is not dependent on we would be fine with that. We would be fine with food. It's just that we don't think for anything that's not pre-made and just sold that there will be enough time to get all the permits for it. For example, could a storefront activation include painters using the space for live painting, or for potters who set up an open ceramic studio to work out of? So it cannot be, okay, so if you can see them doing their work and that is your artist activation, that would be an option. But it have to be visible for the outside and people could look at it. I think they would be considered more artists in that case than a business. So it would be on the artist activation type. Some of our vacant storefronts have broken windows. Would window replacement be considerable and allowable expense? No. You can cover up the windows with art and then whatever you're paying the artist would be an expense, but you cannot replace the windows for this specific program, unfortunately, because that would be a permanent improvement. I heard the improvements are not allowed to be permanent. That does not include the art installation. Is that correct? That is correct. But whatever the art installation is, the artist owns at the end of the program. So it is not permanent. You cannot keep the art. So whatever the artist creates, they can take with them, or it's their own. And if you want to buy it afterwards with funds not from this program as a separate purchase, that's fine. But they are not permanent either. Would you please confirm art included painting, sculpture, art, excluded music, filmmaking, dance? Probably yes. If you can be creative in how you're activating it and there will be a film displayed on the wall for the duration of the program, that's fine. I doubt there'll be like artists or music, you need a specific permit, so they couldn't be there all the time. But for specific artist programming, we encourage the applicants to be creative, so there's nothing that's technically excluded. Would food vendors that make cottage food items such as homemade jams, pickled foods, sauces be considered prepackaged foods? It depends. There are specific requirements for how the food is made and where it is made. I believe it has to be made in a commercial, like licensed kitchen, so maybe not at home, but that is a licensing question. We are not, and as I mentioned before, it is not that we are not allowing food businesses, is that you should consider in your proposal and research how long it would require you to get a permit for whatever you're planning to propose, because those usually take longer, where a retail permit will take probably like a couple of weeks. Another question, if we display art, would we be able to auction those pieces off following the completion of the program? That way we could use the funds raised to further assist local small businesses. So as I mentioned, the art is owned by the business. So if you the art is owned by the artist at the end. So if they want to auction it off, that is totally fine. But it is the artist, it is not the program administrators. So the program administrator cannot auction it out themselves, but the artist can if they want to. Just to be clear, if my business went to the Chamber of Commerce to collaborate with them, that would be okay. My business collaborates with local artists or vendors. Yes, if you want to talk to your chamber, that is completely fine. And the chamber can have subcontractors for this program if there's any specific service that you will be providing them, but they need to be the main applicants. Thank you for your clarifications. You are very welcome. Would the grant be able to cover materials for the artist to complete their work? Yes, so the artist can charge you whatever they want, basically. So if they within a reasonable amount, but whatever they need to make the art and whatever they want to sell their art for, that is what they would get paid. And that should include their whatever materials they need. You wouldn't be invoicing for materials or any detailed things in that case, as you would for other normal programs. In that case, you would just, the invoice would only be to pay the artist for whatever they are charging for their arts. Do you have a requirement of how many hours the space will need to be activated for retail? We don't have a specific requirement, but we do encourage, and once you say how often it will be open your RFP submission, you are then held to that. But we recommend at least 4 or 5 days a week, and also most of the day or during hours where people will be walking by, 8 hours. There's no specific requirements, but obviously the more time your activation will be live, the better for your RFP points, because we do want to have commercial corridors be as active as they can be. Do we need letters of support from elected officials to apply? They are not required, but they are always welcome and helpful if we know that there will be less or fewer issues once the activation is happening. This is in the business, it's not on the street, it's not outside. So we expect not as much issue with all the activations, but it is always helpful if you want to add it to your submission. And for the art, just FYI that whatever art will go up will have to be approved for like certain standards by the city. And then would CBD wellness products for sale be able to be sold on the premises? Lip balm, skincare. I believe CBD might be okay. I'm not entirely sure. We will include this on the FAQ once it's sent out. I'm not sure where the line is on what qualifies and doesn't with CBD. I think somebody has their hand up. If you want to write your question on the chat, that would be great. So we've gone through all the questions on the sheet. If anybody has an additional question, please write it down. I'll give a minute for this. Again, thank you so much to everybody who submitted a question and who is here. We've had a lot of attendees for this webinar, which is really exciting because we think this will be a really great and impactful program. So thanks for joining and for your submission. What is the goal per storefront on small businesses? There's not a specific goal per storefront. If you want to have just one business who you think can be there for the 6 months, that is totally fine. If you want to do 2 months per business, if you want to have one storefront with more than one business, it really is what is best for your neighborhood and your community and what your retail corridor needs. That's why we are leaving all of those options pretty open, because we know that different retail corridors need very different things. So the most important thing is not what you're proposing, but how well what you're proposing responds to the need in your community and the retail corridor that you're submitting for. Can it be mixed up on how they come in and out, or is there a set agreement with them on the timeline of the award timeline? So when you submit your response, we don't expect you to have details on exactly the specific businesses and their time, but we just expect you to have an idea of what you will do. But there's no, you can have, as I said, you can have one business there in a storefront for 6 months. You can also have a few businesses 2 months each. Also, we understand that you might have want to have a business for 6 months and it's not working out and you might switch that business up, that is okay as long as you still have the place active for the time you said you would. Thank you. You're very welcome. So that is all the questions so far. Great. So if there are no other questions, as I said, you will receive an email from us, probably from Maurice on our team, that will include the FAQs with all the questions that have been asked and answered, plus the ones that were not answered, the answers to those, a copy of the presentation, and then a link to this video so you can replay it if you'd like. And again, thank you so much for everybody that joined and for everybody that will apply. As I mentioned, this is really exciting program that we hope will be really impactful and really helpful for the small businesses. Payment on grant award. I'm not sure. Sorry, somebody sent another question. Payment on grant award. I'm not sure what that question means. If you can clarify, that'd be great. So as I mentioned, some of these costs, specifically the cost to the business, to activate the space, so like the rent, furniture rental, anything like that, will be eligible for expedited payment. So it will be faster than a regular process, which can take up to a month after the invoice is submitted. For the one thing that does not qualify for that expedited payment is individual. So what you pay your staff or anything like that, that would still go through the normal process and be paid out within 30 days of invoicing. So as I mentioned, reminder that it is due September 9th at noon. And please try to submit it by Thursday at least. If you have any questions, please email them to BACP Economic Recovery at cityofchicago.gov. We will get back to you as soon as we can, usually same day or within a day. And if you have any technical issues, there's also on the RFP a link to email directly with the software provider, because they can help you out with that a little better than we can. So it looks like those are the questions. So again, thank you so much for all of those who joined.